The T20 World Cup, what a spectacle, right? But have you ever found yourself scratching your head trying to figure out how teams actually qualify? Believe me, it is not as straightforward as it seems. So today, we're going to unpack the whole thing, this unique and, let's be honest, kind of confusing format. So, you've got 20 teams, one trophy. You think it's simple, right? Win your group, move on. But there's this hidden twist in the rulebook, a detail that actually maps out a team's journey before a single ball is even bowled. Let's dive right in. All right, so let's start at the beginning, the World Cup journey. The first phase is, of course, the group stage. This is where that big field of 20 teams starts to get whittled down, and it happens fast in a flurry of really high-stakes games. So yeah, we kick things off with 20 teams. They're split into 4 groups of 5. Now, each team only plays 4 matches, but here's the kicker. Only 8 spots are available for the next round. That means every single game is a total pressure cooker, right from the get-go. And the goal? Well, it's pretty simple, really. Finish in the top 2 of your group. That's it. If you want any shot at lifting that trophy, you have to make that cut. Come in 3rd, 4th, or 5th? Sorry, but your tournament is over. Time to pack your bags. So how do they rank these teams? It all comes down to a really basic point system. A win gets you 2 points, a loss, 0. And if there's a tie, or, the weather just doesn't cooperate and there's no result, both teams walk away with 1 point. Seems easy enough, right? But, and this is a big but, what happens when teams are tied on points? Because with so few games, it happens all the time. So how do you break that tie? You might think they just look at who won the match between those 2 teams, but nope, that's actually not the first thing they check. Okay, so check this out. There's an official tiebreaker ladder. First up, they look at who has the most wins. Simple. If that's still a tie, then we get to the really juicy part, the highest net run rate, or NRR. Now, think of NRR as kind of like a team's run, profit, and loss statement for the tournament. It's all about how big your wins are and how small your losses are. And only if they're still tied after all of that do they finally look at the head-to-head result. This is exactly why you hear commentators obsessing over net run rate. It's a massive, massive deal. Okay, you ready for the big twist? This is the part of the format that is a genuine head-scratcher for a lot of people. It's called the pre-seeding system, and trust me, it completely changes the game. So here's the thing. You'd assume that finishing first in your group means you get a better draw in the next round, right? And finishing second gives you a different path. Well, for the top 8 teams, that's just not how it works. Their path, their journey through the next stage, is pretty much set in stone before the tournament even begins. This is what we call pre-tournament seeding. So before a single ball was bowled, the 8 top-ranked teams were each given a specific seed, like X1 or Y2. And that seed is what determines which Super 8 group they'll land in. Now, why do they do this? Honestly, it's mostly for logistics. It helps fans book flights and hotels, it lets broadcasters schedule those huge matchups way in advance, and it just helps organizers plan the whole shebang. Let me show you how this works. On one side, you have the expected path. Group A winner plays Group B runner-up, the usual stuff. But the actual path is different. Take India, for example. They were pre-seeded as X1. So what that means is, as long as they qualify from their group, it doesn't matter if they finish first or second, they automatically take that X1 slot in the Super 8s. Their group stage games are just about if they qualify, not where they get placed. So, based on that system, here's how the first pre-seeded Super 8 group looked. You had India as X1, Australia as X2, West Indies as X3, and South Africa as X4. Basically, these 4 teams were on a collision course to play each other, provided they all made it out of their initial groups. And on the other side of the bracket, you had the second pre-seeded group. This one had England as Y1, New Zealand as Y2, Pakistan as Y3, and Sri Lanka as Y4. And just like the other group, these matchups were all laid out in advance, creating a very clear, very predictable path to the semis. So you're probably wondering, well, what happens if there's a big upset? The system actually has a really simple rule for that. If an unseeded team qualifies by knocking out a seeded team, they don't get some random new spot. They just take the seed of the team they eliminated. So, for instance, if Zimbabwe had knocked out Australia, who were seeded X2, Zimbabwe would just slide right into that X2 spot for the Super 8s. Simple as that. Okay, so now that we know all the rules, points, net run rate, that pre-seeding twist, let's see how it all comes together in a real high-pressure what-if scenario. Let's imagine this. You wake up, you check the news, and you see this headline. Upset alert. Zimbabwe defeat Australia by 23 runs. Whoa. A headline like that would send absolute shockwaves through the tournament. An unseeded underdog beats a pre-seeded favorite. And just like that, the entire group is blown wide open. So take a look at the standings after a shock result like that. Australia is suddenly stuck in third place with only 2 points. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka and Zimbabwe are looking great, sitting up top with 4 points each. You can bet for Australia the alarm bells would be ringing loudly. And this, right here, is the million-dollar question. After a shock defeat like that, what are Australia's chances to qualify? Suddenly, it's not just about winning your next games. It becomes this incredibly complex mathematical puzzle. Okay, let's break down Australia's narrow path forward. First, they have to win both of their remaining matches. No question. That would get them to 6 points. But here's the crazy part. Even then, qualification is not guaranteed. Why? Because if Zimbabwe wins just one more of their matches, that could force a 3-way tie. And in that wild scenario, with 3 teams all on 6 points, it all comes down to that one thing we talked about, net run rate. Every single run, scored or conceded, suddenly becomes absolutely critical. So after all that madness, all that complexity in the early stages, if a team actually manages to navigate through the group stage and the Super 8s, the road to the final, thankfully, gets a whole lot simpler. Yeah, the knockout stage is just a straight shootout. It's simple. The top 2 teams from each Super 8 group move on. The winner of Group 1 plays the runner-up of Group 2 and vice versa. You win that game, you're in the final. You lose, you're on the next flight home. No second chances, no do-overs. Okay, so we've broken down all the rules, we've looked at the crazy scenarios. What are the big things you should really take away from all this? Here's the takeaway. The 2 big things to remember. Number 1, in the T20 World Cup, the path for the big teams is largely predetermined. It's already mapped out. And number 2, every single run counts. Because when it comes down to a tie, your net run rate is king. And that really leaves us with a fascinating question to think about, doesn't it? Is a pre-seeded format like this more fair because it helps organize a massive tournament? Or does it kind of suck the life out of it, taking away the excitement of truly unpredictable matchups? It's definitely something to ponder the next time you're watching a match. Thanks for joining me for this one.